Close your eyes and drift back with me 2,000 years to a land of water and green. The Red River is quiet tonight. Mist rises from the paddies as the sun sinks behind the mountains, and the last light turns the water the color of old bronze. This is the land the old people called the country of the L-A1C-V, I-C-7T. For 1,000 years, these people had lived along the river. They cast great drums of bronze, tall as a child, their surfaces alive with herons and dancers and boats. When the drums were struck, the sound rolled across the fields like distant thunder, a heartbeat older than kings. But far to the north, beyond the mountains, an empire had grown hungry. The Han had come south, and with them came governors and taxes and the quiet certainty that the world should be made in their own image. At first the empire ruled with a light hand. The L-A1C lords kept their titles, their land, their people, but slowly the hand tightened. New laws came from the north. The old customs were called backward, and each year the taxes rose until the rice that fed a family was carried away in a stranger's cart. The governor of the province was a man named To D-L-A1C-B-H. History remembers him for a single quality, cruelty. He taxed what could not be taxed and punished what could not be helped. To the people of the river, he became the face of everything the empire had taken. In the district of Maya Lin lived a L-A1C lord, and he had 2 daughters. The elder was Trưng T-R-A1C, the younger was Trưng N-H-L-A1C-B. They were raised not only in silk and poetry, but in the old ways of the warrior, the bow, the blade, the reading of ground and river. Their father taught them that a name was a thing to be defended. Trưng T-R-A1C married a lord named Thai Sarch of the neighboring district. He too came from an old line, and he too had grown weary of bowing to the north. Together, quietly, they began to speak of resistance, gathering the loyalty of the L-A1C lords, one by one, like a farmer saving seed. But To D-L-A1C-B-H heard the whispers. To break the gathering storm, he struck at its heart. Thai Sarch was seized and put to death, a warning written in blood, meant to teach the L-A1C lords the price of defiance. It was meant to end her. Instead, it ended her fear. They say Trưng T-R-A1C did not weep where others could see. She stood in the rain until the dawn, and when she turned back toward her house, the grief had become something harder and quieter and far more dangerous. In the spring of the year 40, Trưng T-R-A1C raised her banner. Her sister rode at her side, and to the astonishment of the empire, the river answered. From district after district, the L-A1C lords came, until the rebellion was no longer 2 sisters and their grief, but an army. And it is here that the story becomes something the world had rarely seen. For many of those who came to fight came led by women, daughters and mothers and widows of the river, who took up the spear beside the sisters and would not be moved. One by one, the citadels fell. 65 strongholds, the old histories say, opened their gates or broke before her. And To D-L-A1C-B-H, the man who had thought a single death would silence a people, gathered what he could and fled north, back over the mountains, into the safety of the empire. And so, for the first time in generations, the land of the river belonged to its own people. Trưng T-R-A1C was proclaimed Queen Trưng Vuong, and the drums that had called the people to war now called them home. She ruled from Maya Lin, from a hall of dark wood, where the bronze drums stood again in the places of honor. The L-A1C lords were restored. The old customs, so long called backward, returned quietly to the villages, like water finding its level after a flood. And she did a thing kings rarely do. She gave the harvest back. For 2 years, the tribute was lifted, and the rice that had once vanished northward stayed in the villages that grew it. The children of the river went to sleep with full bowls and did not know how rare a thing that was. But the queen did not sleep easily. She knew the empire did not forgive, and did not forget. On the northern passes, she set watchers, and each morning she looked to the mountains. The peace of those years was real, but it was a peace held like a breath, and no breath can be held forever. Far to the north, in the halls of the Han, the Emperor Guangwu had not forgotten. A province could not be allowed to slip free, for if one river could break away, so might 100 others. And so he summoned the one man he trusted to make an example of the south. The man was Ma Yuan. He was old now, his face lined by a lifetime of war, but his name still carried weight across the empire. They called him the wave-calming general, the man sent to still the waters that would not be still. In all his years, he had never known defeat. In the year 42, he marched. A great army moved south, and a fleet moved with it along the coast, and the dust of their passing rose against the mountains. The held breath of the free years was about to end. Ma Yuan was not a man to hurry. As he came, he built. He cut roads through the mountains, dug channels through the marshes, laid stone where there had been only jungle, so that never again could the empire be kept out by distance alone. He was not merely fighting a war, he was closing a door. Month by month, the machine of conquest ground southward, patient and unstoppable, until at last it neared the land of the river, and the two sisters gathered what they had and rode out to meet it. They met near a lake the old histories call Lang Biletawani in the worst of the season, the time of rains and heat and fever, when the very air grew heavy and sick. It was ground that punished patience least, and Ma Yuan was the most patient of men. The army of the river fought with fury, for they fought for their homes. But fury tires, and Ma Yuan did not. The rains and the sickness thinned both sides, and slowly, terribly, the Letawani lines began to give ground. Trưng Letawani AFC drew her forces back, deeper into the land she knew, toward the rivers and hills that had sheltered her people for 1,000 years. If the empire would not tire, then perhaps the land itself would fight beside her. At a place called Letawani A5 she turned and made her stand. Her sister Trưng Letawani CB stood at her shoulder, as she had from the first day. Around them gathered the last of the loyal lords, fewer now, but unbroken. They had come this far together, they would not run. The battle was long, and it was cruel. The histories say that tens of thousands fell upon that ground, and when at last the smoke thinned and the rain washed the field, the army of the river, the army that had once thrown down 65 citadels, was broken. What happened next is told two ways, and it is worth telling both. The Chinese histories are brief and cold. The sisters were taken and beheaded, and their story ended by the sword, a rebellion closed like a ledger. But the people of the river tell it differently and have told it for 2,000 years. They say the sisters would not be dragged north in chains, would not be paraded through the streets of an empire. They rode instead to the Heart River, and there they gave themselves to its waters, free at the last, as they had lived. And the river took them. In the year 43, 3 years after two sisters had first raised a banner against the greatest empire on earth, the rebellion came to its quiet end. The drums fell silent, the mist closed over the water. Ma Yuan remade the land in the empire's image. To mark the southern edge of the Han world, he raised great pillars of bronze and had a warning carved upon them. Should these pillars ever fall, the land itself would be destroyed. And the people, it is said, feared the words but not the men. Each traveler who passed would lay a single stone at the foot of the pillars, one stone, and then another, year upon year, until the bronze was buried beneath a mountain of small stones, and no one could ever say the pillars had fallen. The empire would hold the land for 1,000 years more, but it never truly held the memory, for the story of the two sisters did not sink with them into the Heart River. It rose again, in the villages, in the temples, in the songs mothers sang to their children in the dark. Today, across Vietnam, temples still stand to Hai Bat Trung, the Two Ladies Trưng. Each spring, in Hanoi and beyond, processions carry their memory through the streets, with drums and red banners, 2,000 years after the river closed over them. They ruled for only 3 years, but in those 3 years they had shown a thing the empire could never unshow, that the river could rise against the sea. And on quiet nights, when the mist climbs from the paddies and the old bronze drums are silent, the land remembers still the two sisters who would not kneel. Rest now. Let the river carry you. Sleep well.